Ta-da! So now we know we've encoded errors, we've encoded completion. The one thing we're missing now is unsubscribe or deallocation of resources. Before we get onto that, well, you'll be glad to know we're going back to interfaces. How long have we got now?
15 minutes.
15, okay. Yes, fine. So, remember how...
Maybe it's interest if people say.
Level of interest between 0 and 5? 3? 2? 5? 1? Okay, we'll see how we go. The demos are a lot lighter and easier to follow than the code. I recognise there's probably quite a lot of code to watch. But just let's look back to the start. Functional enumerable. Do you remember when we pulled out the interfaces, I said, come back to me. That's interesting because that disposable, they kind of cheated with iEnumerable. The enumerator itself is iDisposable. Now, you can't break that down into functions. But the way that we can sort of re-encode it is to, let's go from action of notification of T, right? So what if it's not just that you give somebody something. What if you give somebody something, which is how you want to be called back, that guy gives you a token that you can use to say, I'm no longer interested. Right? So this is probably, for those of you that have used RX, it's starting to look a lot more familiar. So from this we can sort of mechanically deduce, just as we did in the first part, worked out the functional representation, we can now go from functional back into interfaces. So let's do that now. So we have this outer func. Yes, sorry, I'll get there in the end. Interface observable 2. We concluded that subscribe was a pretty good name to use. That was the thing that we passed on next on error on complete to. So let's stick with that. And let's say so I'm getting ahead of myself now, but if you look at that second line, function of action and notification of T, disposable. So the outer function here, that's the iObservable, right? And we passed in the iObserver, which is this inner action. So right now, I'm describing the observable. And we decided that was going to be subscribe. And that guy, as I said, is going to be the observer. And we are interested. So we need observer 2. And at this point, it's true to say that we could just do this. Notification T N. But really, C# doesn't have great support for that sort of discriminated union type, so it's kind of a lot nicer just to break them out. So we're going to have on next value, we're going to have on completed, which doesn't take a value, and we're going to have on error, which takes an exception. All of which we've seen before, right? In the functional representation. So let's go back to basics and do arrange again, just real quick. So public static. Static. Observable and 2 of int range, and that guy takes an int, which is the start, and an int, which is the count. So the first one, we can't do anonymous interface implementation in C#. I think the Java guys can, but we're going to have to do something a little different. So let's return anonymous observable to so on int, and let me do some legwork for us. So we know now, we should be pretty familiar with this one, right? So when you call subscribe, you give the observer, the guy that's going to receive the callbacks, and as we said, we're going to return a token, which means that when he's bored of getting those callbacks, he can just call dispose, and that subscription is going to be taken care of. Oops. So basically, let's just pass in a shorthand to make this clearer, disposable, and we'll just call that factory, and let's dash that away. Let's also make this more generic. T return factory factory observer. And that was the T as well. Okay, so this function that we're going to pass to our anonymous observer is basically the thing that says, when you see a new subscriber, just run this code. So again, just like before, we can say observer into this code is disposed as false, which means it's unsubscribed, and now we can do our for. Oops. Count observer on next. We have a method to call this time, which is start plus I and increment I. And then once we've done that, observer on completed. The thing is, we've got to return a disposable at some point, and the thing to recognise here is, let's just create a little class here, disposable dot create. So I want to just run arbitrary code when somebody calls dispose. Return disposable action. Okay. Do you see how I got that? So basically whatever I do in this function here, this will be executed when somebody calls dispose. Was that too much? So as I said, the code that's going to execute here is the code that's going to execute when somebody takes our observable and calls subscribe. This is the stuff we're going to run. But when that guy does call subscribe, he gets an iDisposable back, right? So here we have the opportunity to say, well, when he calls dispose on that disposable, this is the code that's going to run. And in this case, all I'm going to do is set a flag that is disposed. And once it is disposed, we want to just kind of stop. Yeah? That's what we said before. This is kind of like the resource deallocation side of things. You don't want to notify this guy anymore. And nor really do you really want to tell him that it's completed, but for the sake of argument, we'll do it here. So back on this side of things, we can say, we're running out of time. Let's not do that. Let's go